Starting off, we know that James Baldwin is a literary giant, right? And he's a fearless advocate for civil rights and identity politics. So, how did you approach capturing such a unique and dynamic figure?
Well, lucky for me, everything has been on the page and everything was written on the page by Mr. Baldwin. So I read about five of his books when I got the job and read them throughout and heard the interviews. But everything that was on the page for this season, season four, Chris Brancato and his team really got at the heart of making this accountability to the community theme happening. And I really tried to lock into the importance of what that was instead of any mimicry or any playing as James Baldwin. It was to ask the questions that he was asking and wait for the answer. They gave me two incredible scene partners, the great Forrest Whitaker and the radiant Ilfina Shadera, who I just adore. So it was easy in that regard.
So, James Baldwin had obviously a unique connection to Harlem, but he also equally had a connection to France. So, story, these scenes, how do you think he balances that, love that he found overseas away from this core place that birthed so many, meant so much to him through the.
Well, I think anytime you escape a place and you come back changed and different. And every time he came back, he brought something nurturing with him. Part of that was an indomitable spirit of community, of togetherness, of taking care of your neighbor, which he grew up with, thanks to his mother and his very large family that he always took care of. But in this season, he's very much interested in figuring out how to piece together the community again and making sure that the wreckage, that the violence that we've known for three seasons doesn't take down the entire village, but that there is something being planted inside of that soil that's going to grow again through words, through concept, through just redirection of intention for Bumpy Johnson. So that became like my major focus of how to play him. It's just tell the story that's on the page.
So those two are polar opposites, one with force, one with words. So what was that interaction like, not only on screen, but off the screen, interacting with Forrest and developing that chemistry?
Okay, well, I had to try really hard not to fanboy out on him. And every time we cut, I just like, well, so like when you were doing EDM on, okay, when you were doing directing Sandra Bullock and Hope Floats, when I was just watching Waiting to Exhale again last night, and knowing that how prolific he is as an actor and as a director, it was so important to me to keep a little bit of that in James Baldwin so that he was still intimidated by this figure in Harlem, where James Baldwin, I don't think, was intimidated by too many people. But for the relationship on screen, it had to be that. And he's so open, so warm, so giving, was there for all my coverage. When I'm doing a two-page monologue, he's just sitting right there in an air-conditionedless basement, letting me do it for the 16th time. He was so incredibly giving. And that relationship is what I think these men and so many men and women had in Harlem in the 60s. This mutual respect, even though we're coming from very different points of view.
So you mentioned mutual respect, and we're in a time where that sort of mutual respect for the base purpose seems to be lost. How do you think that juxtaposes with what we see on screen, with what we're currently feeling, and sort of playing off of that?
The juxtaposition of say that one more time.
The juxtaposition of what we're currently experiencing in real time in America and what we see on the screen is a time where we experience something so they're obviously being handled slightly.
Well, what's wonderful about television, the theater and, and film is you're getting to watch conversations unfold. And I keep reiterating how important asking the question is versus getting the answer and watching people discuss issues in a way that we don't do today would be very helpful to remember. You know, two sides have to come together to make a scene and there's conflict in there. And two people have to come together to try to work out a problem. And we've kind of gotten out of talking through things. We've gotten shouting or cutting off. And if
Right.
people shouted or cut it off in the 20s, or I'm sorry, the 60s, I'm thinking about all the stuff that started in the 20s in the Harlem Renaissance where we had that community. Then it kind of fell away. Then it came back in the 60s. Then it fell away. How do we get it back again is by talking to each other and knowing that we're coming from two different points of view.
Love that. So in the series, we know that Malcolm X's assassination is looming over these events. How do you think knowing that and obviously what is unfolded shaped Baldwin's perspective at this time?
Well, his great relationship with Malcolm X, James Baldwin and Malcolm X were friends. Again, two polar opposite people who knew how to sit and share a meal and discuss life events. It rocked him incredibly because we were losing another literary, another brilliant political, influential mind in Harlem and through violence and to violence. And I think Jimmy Baldwin understood that unless we cap the violence, in 1966 and 7, which season 4 is, you're going to lose a generation. And I think his intention is to figure out how do we have accountability with this wreckage and figure out how to stop it if we want the children to have some idea of how to hope and succeed.